very, very seldom am I confronted with a clip where I can't find some sort of like, silliness in it, and or I'm recognizing that when I see them, it's going to take work. And this one is from our dear friend Jimmy Dore, and Jimmy has so far um, been in the camp that Russia had every right to invade Ukraine because NATO made them do it, that they were doing it to denazify the place, that there are enough Nazis in Ukraine to justify all-out war by Russia on the country, period, end of story. And the Uyghur genocide did not happen in China, is not happening, is not ongoing. The re-education and concentration camps don't exist. That's all false. And that's, I mean, that's pretty deep reads as far as denying stuff. I when you start denying those kind of things, it's no surprise that he was on the Young Turks at one point, considering how Cenk used to be with the Armenian genocide, or arguably still is, depending on how you feel about the statement he finally brought himself around to make. But when I saw the name of this one, I was like, it set off alarm bells. Twitter censors anti-war journo over Tiananmen Square tweet. Now, I find it hard to believe that an anti-war journalist who wrote something about Tiananmen Square, that is legitimately that thing, that is literally an anti-war journalist, would write anything about Tiananmen Square that would get them censored on Twitter. Now, he's had Danny Haifong on a few times, the guy that he's talking about, and Haifong has been running interference against the story of the Uyghur genocide, the rape camps, the sterilizations, the slave labor, all that stuff, like just flat out saying it's not true, which is a lie, period. But I'm very curious, like, where they go with this, because I haven't seen his tweet, but I have a feeling that if it got censored in any ways, it's like a pro CCP denial of the Tiananmen Square circumstances at all, like that tank guy doesn't exist or something.
Has appeared in such publications as
I think he's already talking about Danny, because I cut off the top because it's ads for his
Mint Press News, Counterpunch, and the American Herald Tribune for the last 5 years. He has also been a weekly.
By the way, Jimmy has Haifong on a lot, and yet he's reading. Oh, never mind.
Contributor to the Black Agenda Report. Please welcome Danny Haifong. Hi, Danny. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
So now something horrible happened to you. You tweeted this out, right? Now, your specialty is China.
His specialty is China.
And we've had you on the show to talk about China in the past. And this is from your your Substack? Is that what this is? Or is this your Medium?
No, this is just a screenshot of the tweet because, Twitter forced me to delete it just for my countdown.
Oh, really?
But we can, yeah.
Every June 4th, Western propagandists remind us of the Tiananmen Square massacre to smear China. The truth? No massacre occurred on the square, and the violence that took place, I guess, in Beijing during that time was part of a failed color revolution backed by the United States. A thread.
We can
get to that.
So here's the tweet.
To a thread.
You said you tweeted this out. Every June 4th, Western propagandists remind us of the Tiananmen Square massacre to smear China. The truth? No massacre occurred on the square, and the violence that took place Beijing during the time was part of a failed color revolution backed by the United States. Now, you tweeted that out.
Yeah, and what's wrong with that? Sorry, I didn't realize it was so. Yeah, I mean, straight up, it's one thing to, like, some people are new to the Uyghur storyline and maybe believe that Western media plays it up as a pivot point against China and might believe some of the talking points. But, like, Tiananmen Square is fucking settled history. People know what went on there. You're not even allowed to show the guy standing in front of the tank on Chinese social media. They are scrubbing the circumstance. Imagine if the US government made it impossible for you to tweet or write or talk about Kent State, right? Or Tuskegee or something like that, which you aren't. Yeah, I tried to turn the volume down. I apologize on that. I don't know why it was higher volume than the other one. Probably because we're jumping between sites and they set their volume at different ones. Yeah. So, and again, the idea that you're like, you just wrote that. All you wrote was that nobody was, students weren't murdered at Tiananmen Square. And and the ones that did had it coming. They were all backed by the United States. The U.S. created the Tiananmen Square massacre. Those people don't want freedom.
And they then did this to you. They said you violated their rules against abuse and harassment. You may not engage in targeted harassment of someone or incite other people to do so. So that doesn't make any sense. I thought they were going to say that you were denying a mass like murder or something, but you're.
That's essentially it. It says, like, Western propagandists remind us of the Tiananmen Square. The idea would be, I suppose, that the targeted group would be Western media.
They don't allow you to do on YouTube, I know, but that doesn't make sense, right, Dan?
I think the first person somebody reported the tweet, and they probably did it under, that was the best one that described it. It's harassing people who are of Chinese descent who live in the United States, who know about Tiananmen, and denies their reality, and that kind of thing.
I mean, I guess there were many Western propagandists who were triggered because it's obvious that
it got reported.
That's the only thing in that tweet that could be targeted as such, as inciting harassment.
By the way, that when Jax was on, that was the other thing I told you, that we played that. I guess you're going to show that ad. And I missed it. Jackson, I can't believe they put that part. And I was so blown away that was the thing. I didn't know since I was a kid, I assumed. Well, are you about to show the video?
No, I don't have that. I don't know what video you're talking about.
It was a Go Army to join the information warriors, I guess.
Oh, I didn't see it. No, and
it's the most disturbing thing. I mean, I don't even know why they made it. But basically, they're showing how they do information warfare, and you could be part of it, like to join the army. And they show the tank going around the guy instead of running him over, which I guess had been cut out all the years I ever heard of it.
Oh, no kidding.
Well, they know he didn't run him over. That was the point.
About it in the
he disappeared later.
Commercial. This is what we do. Like in the commercial, you know how crazy that is?
Okay, hold on. Hold on. He's referencing that there's some sort of ad for the army that says, let's see, Go Army propaganda ad Tiananmen. What's your warrior? Let's see. Is there trying to find, like, it's supposed to be older, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they'll call it up. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. It sounds like it's fake.
They put the Tiananmen Square thing with the tank and the guy in their propaganda video to show you this is the kind of
stuff that you could be a part of doing. Yes. Okay.
Oh, no. By the way,
it took me a minute to understand what he was telling me because that was so mind blowing to me that was even on video.
I met that guy.
The actual guy?
The guy who got his legs cut off. They said a tank ran him over.
Yeah.
I met that guy at the Oslo Freedom Forum. I interviewed him. I have that on video somewhere.
What did he say?
I interviewed a bunch of people like that, and then after I figured out what the Oslo Freedom Forum was, which was just a shield for imperialism.
What isn't, though? I mean, honestly.
I didn't air any of those interviews. I didn't.
No, you didn't think to maybe put them up in context that, I did this in the context of whether you could even run them now and go through them and go, here's what I was unsure about at this point. I believe this. Here's where I've changed my
want
mind.
anything to do with them. And so, because they were all in,
Possible tornadoes in Chicago. Be careful, everybody.
they were using those people to further imperialism.
Just in general, just like, how are they with just like making them pass out like Bitcoin ads, or
And they would find victims, and then they would say, "Oh, look, we need to go bomb Yemen more," and stuff like that.
Oh, well, yeah, but the only reason we need to bomb Yemen is because it's full of Nazis. I mean, you can bomb them because they're full of Nazis, this is pretty obvious. Yeah, remember. Yeah, that's why you bomb Yemen, according to Jimmy, anyways.
And that's what the Oslo Freedom Forum, and that's who's that the chess guy?
The chess guy, Murray Head,
Gary Kasparov. Yeah, he's an imperialist.
Okay, well, at least it's a nice living.
Okay, so you go on to say, 3 years prior to the Tiananmen incident, George Soros had started an NGO, that stands for non-governmental organization.
Right. Not government. So you're saying it isn't the government. All right.
That had influence in Beijing, called the Fund for Reform and Opening of China. Mm-hmm. Key protest leaders and rioters were supported by Soros' Zorg, and it was promptly closed following the unrest. So you're saying, Danny,
that anybody who is helping them kind of gain freedom from the communist overlords, after that they were shut down, and okay, yeah, that happens every time you fail to overturn a dictatorship. That
George Soros. So
yeah, it's Soros. It's Super Jew. Jesus. Like at this point, why aren't we straight up? Why aren't we just watching Alex Jones?
With a lot of these things, like in Syria, people tried to pretend that it was the Arab Spring that led.
Well, in Syria, again, I don't want to bug you about this, Jimmy. But let's see. Let's see. There's a bit of a history. In Syria itself, and I suppose. Hold on one second. I suppose. Let's see. There's sort of an ongoing. The far right throws support behind the Syrian government and is accused of working. Okay. What else could it possibly be? Let's see. Yeah, here you go. And this is March 2021. We've covered most of these before, but if you're going to talk about Syria, under the Jimmy Dore doctrine of attacking Ukraine, Yemen and Syria are, they all bets are off. You're allowed
to this overthrow of Assad, or this uprising that wanted to overthrow him. It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. The people against Assad are
It was CIA called Timber Sycamore. They flooded billions of dollars into terrorists to go try to overthrow that guy. So,
yeah, terrorists, like anti-fascists, these anti-fascist terrorists who don't like the fact that the right wing in America and Italy and Germany and Hungary like Assad. And all right, this is so stupid.
Now you're saying that
Like that. I mean, the blanket ignorance of Jimmy about any of this stuff. Like he can't look. He can't look because if he finds out any of it, it shoots a major hole in his argument.
George Soros,
who is Jewish,
was doing.
And again, we'll remind you, Jimmy thinks that when Israel invades Palestinian territories because they think they have claim to it, and it's for their own security, and that is their reasoning, that they are monsters and must be destroyed. And when Russia does it to Ukraine, Russia is in the right and should be allowed to do so. And the only difference is Israel is a Jewish state.
A similar thing. He was funding the people to go do protests in Tiananmen Square.
Yeah. Look, if you really want to protest, do you really need money? I mean, what do you got to eat for?
Yeah. So essentially, this was part, as you said,
Where did Bill Gates come in? That's what I want to know.
Part of an overall color revolution, similar to what we're seeing in the modern era, right? Post-Cold War.
What is a color revolution? Tell people what the color revolution.
Tell Jimmy what a color revolution is.
So a color revolution is a Western-backed, generally the U.S., because
because nobody else wants freedom and stuff. The European Union doesn't want any of this stuff. They just play footsie with it so they can sell wine and cheese to the world, beer.
It took off during the period at the fall of the Soviet Union, 1980s, into the current period. Over the last 40 years, there's been a lot of investment from U.S. NGOs primarily, because the U.S. is the big hegemon, but they have all the Western.
They're not, and Soros is not an American. He's Hungarian.
Allies, the UK, all the Western countries that kind of.
Yeah, just the West does these things. You know, the country that Jimmy lives in and lives under the protection of and can shit all over the government and his fellow citizens all day long with no repercussions. And if he did any of this shit in any of the countries that he decries as, or I guess extols as virtuous, more virtuous than we, if he set foot in them and said anything remotely like he says about the U.S. or U.S. citizens, he'd have been either drawn and quartered or caged forever.
Do the bidding of the United States on their side, and they essentially fund these NGOs. For example, the National Endowment for Democracy is one of the bigger ones, right?
Yeah. The Natural Endowment for Democracy. What a terrible. Dore's mic is heft. Yeah,
that funds quote unquote
his
civil
end.
Society groups, organizations,
Bellingcat.
media.
Bellingcat, evil Bellingcat.
Exactly. Bellingcat.
Yeah, fake media organizations that are just mouthpieces for the intelligence community.
Right, like you are for the GRU, I guess. I mean, what's the fucking difference? I mean, if you want to talk about direct talking points from a government straight through somebody's face, look no further than Danny Haifong and the CCP and Jimmy Dore and the GRU and the FSB. It's just, I mean, it is 1-to-fucking-1. Look, hold on. RT. Let's just see. Let's see. What do they got here? EU has become the 51st U.S. state. Let's see. How Russian troops confronted NATO forces in Yugoslavia in a significant post-Soviet first. Yeah. Okay, hold on. U.S. economy major recession. New York spent big on drag show for kids, media. That's Jimmy's done a story about that as well. A risk of nuclear arms used in the highest in decades. That's why we shouldn't provoke them. Germany has planned to help prevent global famine. Let's see. Japanese yen slides to record low. He's not even talking. U.S. is trying to use Ukraine as a test lab for its drones, a move Russia is unlikely to forget. Rachel Marsden, top EU official used poorly sourced disinformation in an attempt to smear Russia at the UN. January 6th Capitol riot was not the real insurrection. Westerners are skeptical about their leaders, but not their anti-Russian narratives. That's because the people need to die because you're never going to get it out of there. Well, let's see. U.S. looks into deaths linked to baby formula. Oscar winner appeared in court on sex charges. That's what are they? Yeah, what's his name? Is in UK. Private space company loses 2 more NASA satellites. All right. China trains its new security partner in the Pacific. That's nice of them. Biden shouldn't run again. Democrats tell New York Times. West should take Moscow's interest into account. Kissinger. Oh, look, they're quoting the same guy that he did. Pelosi accused of blocking questions. Makes sense. Russia accused the U.S. of concealing data on biolabs. That's another one. Foreign fighters in Donbass. CSTO allies. Let's see more of them. Ex-general loses think tank role amid FBI probe. I don't know. Protesters oppose jet ban. Prince Andrew, Capitol insurrection deniers blame for inflation. What? Russian ace Medvedev recaptures world #1 spot. Okay, these are just other stuff. Basically, you'll find nothing that conflicts with what Jimmy's saying. And normally, anything that's coming out about the U.S. will be perfectly in line. Like, let's see. Ukraine, China, and stronger security ties. Pakistan, Zelensky vows to take Donbass. Oh, this is their front page. Hold on. Russia and former Soviet Union. There we go. Russia has crossed all lines. DPR. Zelensky vows to retake Donbass and Crimea. Ukrainian envoy berates Germany. Ukrainian mayor defects. 3 killed in Ukrainian shelling of market. There you go. This is what Jimmy says all the time. Ukrainian troops shelled the Maysky market in Donetsk on Monday, killing 3 people. Donetsk People's Republic officials have said. According to them, the number of wounded has reached 18. Yankagin, an advisor in the government of Donetsk, told reporters that a woman and a child were among those killed. City officials also reported that a hospital and a gas pipeline were damaged. That's weird. Gas pipeline. Wonder how where they would stack that on the level of importance next to woman and child. Local media said 10 rockets were launched at Donetsk from a Ukrainian-controlled area. Let me guess, a disputed area? All right. Russia, along with Donbass forces, Ukraine have repeatedly accused each other of shelling residentially. Moscow insists that it only strikes military sites. On Sunday, Sergei Gaiday, a senior Ukrainian appointed official, said that Russian forces shelled the city of Lysychansk, also in Donbass, killing 3 people, including a 6-year-old boy. A senior said that Russian forces shelled the city of it. Russia attacked the neighboring state in late February following the... Oh, all right. So that's that's backwards. All right, good.
And they did it in China. There was something called the Chinese intellectual, which the
Chinese intellectual
NED funded at a tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars beginning in the 1980s to first spread to Chinese immigrants in the United States, professionals, those kind of folks. Then they switched in 1988, a year before the protests began, or before they really jumped off. They switched and started to spread the Chinese intellectual around China in order to infiltrate the universities and make them kind of hotbeds of unrest. And that's exactly kind of how the Tiananmen Square.
And so that's how you foment, that's how you create a natural uprising, right? And so they've been
by putting silly ideas in the people's heads that they should be able to determine their own lives.
Doing that. They did the same thing in Taiwan, right?
No.
What am I? Yeah.
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. I'm sorry.
Hong Kong.
Yeah, what's the difference?
I mean, Hong Kong, and there's a lot of U.S. influence in Taiwan too.
No, I didn't mean. Yeah, I meant. Yeah, I got that mixed up.
Yeah, there's a lot of U.S. influence in Taiwan. It's why they have legalized gay marriage. It's why their businesses actually function. It's why they have an open society. It's terrible.
Why is it called a color revolution?
It's called a color revolution because oftentimes, I mean, there's a gentleman, Gene Sharp, who went to a program. He's an academic. He's known as kind of like a nonviolent protest guru.
Oh, yeah. Terrible.
He went to a program.
You know, somebody that would hang out with Ben Shapiro.
That's known as the CIA at Harvard, the Harvard International School. And he was trained by someone at the RAND Corporation, Thomas Meshinger, who came up with sort of a manual. They came up with a manual that showed how to generate nonviolent protests abroad in order to get regime change, right? To battle authoritarianism.
Yeah, what a terrible notion. What the fuck? Why don't we just bomb those fuckers? Why would you just use ideas to make people want to change or come up with their own? What the fuck? One would think you would be for this kind of thing.
And he actually was in China beginning, in 1989, right before the protests began. and he was actually monitoring the protests. There's some suspicion.
Yeah, he was calling in. Yes, they're moving out into the streets. Yes, tanks. Yes, it'll be great. Yes, nothing's happening. Yes, something's happening. Yes, something, and then nothing. I'll let you know when nothing happens and something happens later.
That he was involved, but nonetheless, the color revolution is all about. It's kind of a code word for nonviolent protest for political ends.
Sounds horrifying. Now, what you have right now is Kurt's really confused, and Jimmy's really confused, and both of them are trying to figure out how they can make that bad. Nonviolent ways to stop authoritarianism. I hope Kurt has a joke that I can go, ha ha, to that gets me out of this, because I've just realized how far on the wrong side of history I am and how insane Danny Haiphong is for supporting this shit.
Generally, they turn violent because
the authoritarian governments don't want to be overturned.
Because nonviolent protests don't usually cause regime change without some kind of chaos and spark and some kind of disorder that can really bring down a government.
Yeah, but you're still marching to Jimmy's drum here. He's still on the side of that. He actually prefers the violent side of things. So Jimmy's trying to figure out how to not step right in the fucking middle of being anti-BLM right now. I mean, honestly, it sounds like Dano is a Chinese mouthpiece. He is, Karen. Well spotted. But he and Kurt are both like, how? That sounds good, though. That sounds... So non-governmental organizations, private individuals, anti-authoritarianism, anti-fas... And so the CIA is involved in non-violent things, and if...
So color revolution is really just a kind of moniker for creating unrest abroad for political ends. That this is how they kind of co-opted the left in the 60s and 70s, right? They use the language of democracy, and so the
this is the language of democracy. This isn't these people don't have these actual ideas. I mean, it's basically MK Ultra. These people, they don't want
color revolution. Oftentimes,
that's it. Like people in Hong Kong don't want to be free. They just been bullshitted by the CIA into thinking so.
Sometimes even the protests themselves are named after a color. The Orange Revolution, for example, in Ukraine in 2004.
Right.
So
that's so interesting.
So the color revolution is really just a name to show that there's something rising, right? Democracy is rising.
So they branded it like McDonald's, like he's like the Ray Kroc that made McDonald's. This guy
Gene Sharp. He's very well. A lot of people on the left, even Howard Zinn, defended him upon close to his death, saying that he was someone who had a lot of principles and.
Yeah, but we all know that isn't true. Oh, thanks, Larry. Appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. By the way, I should reset. You're watching House Sparks Mega Worldwide. Can you? They're both still having a hard time with this. They're still both trying to figure out how to shit on this guy's memory. And Danny Haiphong is basically saying, "Yeah, fuck that. Peaceful, nonviolent revolutions that overthrow authoritarianism. This is just Western imperialism. This is the bleeding of Western ideals and destroying the very people that, that should be allowed to have whatever authoritarian government there. This is like anti-CCP.
Was on the left, but he actually was very deep in the national security state of the United States, helping CIA, helping these organizations.
So.
Well, no. How? Then if he's helping the CIA, then the CIA apparently has a vested interest in nonviolent ideological changes in countries, which also cuts against this. Would I consider debating these idiots about China? Of course.
Do their work abroad.
So you go on to tell more of the story.
Yeah, let's just get past that because you fucked up my whole narrative. Now somehow the CIA is the good guys in this. It's and that Can we get back to me slamming this Jew with too much money?
And you say, while Western media has portrayed the event as a Chinese government massacre, journalists on the ground rejected that premise. Graham Earnshaw of Reuters saw no violence in the square and said at least half the deaths that occurred were Chinese cops and soldiers.
At least half? Oh, so the other half. So it was a fight between cops and soldiers and unarmed civilians. By the way, let me remind everybody, in China, there is no Second Amendment. These are not, if you want to talk about we need to fight a tyrannical government, rise up, we have the right to bear arms. There is none of that in China. You're talking about rocks, sticks. If they get a gun, they're taking it from somebody after a bunch of other people have been killed. And by the way, what Danny and Jimmy are asking you to do is trust the numbers the Chinese gave about the number of dead in Tiananmen Square.
Yep.
Propaganda is vital to color revolutions. We hear of Tank Man.
Well, it's also an ideological war. It's only propaganda if you're against it in this particular case.
Tank Man, that's the guy I met.
Mhm.
Right? We hear
Well, how
of,
did he lose his legs then?
we hear of Tank Man, but not that his actions occurred the day.
He lost his legs at a imperialism convention. Were you not paying attention, Kurt? He gave them to an oil company in exchange for eternal life. They put him on an adrenochrome drip.
After June 4th, or that he left the scene unscathed without any violence from Chinese authorities. This is confirmed in the video of the incident.
Right. Nobody said he got ran over on that day. He became an emblem because he alone stood there and they started moving the tank around. They didn't end up running him over. Now, this is like the fucking Mandela effect. They're just making up a detail that supposedly happened.
I don't have that video. A WikiLeaks cable also corroborated that no violence occurred on Tiananmen Square on June 4th. The cable was from the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. It confirmed no violence occurred and that protesters freely came and left the square.
Mm-hmm.
Only the Telegraph has reported on the cable.
Hasp?
Really?
Really?
Since June 4th, 1989, China has accomplished major achievements.
Yes, they have. And all of them entailed them opening up to the West. Every last one of them.
The elimination of extreme poverty.
No, they just declared anybody with more that makes $401 a year. Before the number was like tacked to standard of living. Now, if you make or you're seen to make and a household makes $401, you're no longer poor instantly. You don't have a shortage or whatever. Just at that line. They have not eliminated extreme poverty. That's horseshit. Hold on. Mm-hmm. 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 Same issue of homelessness that any major city has all the time. What the country is doing. Social workers in China spend considerable time and energy helping the homeless. Thanks, Maxwell. They're like, hold on. The guys at that's just like a white paper somebody did. Mm-hmm. Okay. I've been asked to fill in for Joan Esposito on WCPT this Thursday, so I said yes. Hold on. I wish I had this like called already because it was like I don't know that it was like. Oops. Give me 1 second. Let's see, sir. Let's see if this guy. Maybe some of this.
I can pull back.
Hold on. They're in. This is.
Crap, and I'm going to call it crap. That is not a good part of Chinese culture. It's based in superstitious nonsense. It's witchcraft. It's the same kind of thing you see in Africa with the...
This is when they're using like animals like for medicine, that kind of stuff. The dog meat part. Okay, this is a different one. Hold on. I'll find a... He covers all this kind of stuff. And this is... Serpent ZA and Lao Y86, both of them are people like I who love Chinese people, Chinese culture, have for a long time. And... There you go. I'll skip through some of this.
前面有路吗？好。
Welcome everybody to another episode of ADV China. We're talking poverty today. So...
I mean, I know it's not a cheery thing, but there is
No.
something I think that needs to be addressed, and it's something that is constantly lied about
Yes.
by the leadership in China, and it's something that I think is unfair to Chinese people.
Agreed. Hold on 1 second. Let me skip ahead because they do a bunch of this stuff. This is understand, like, think about this in the terms of what Danny and those guys are all saying.
Urban area. I don't know. What would you call this?
I would say it's smack dab like average China.
Yeah, average Chinatown that you see in the more rural areas. You can see the street food there. You know, this is the kind of main area of the town. You can see they've got restaurants set. Sometimes
it took us, when I was shooting there, 45 minutes to an hour extra to get to where we were shooting, even if you looked at the map and you're like, why don't we go straight through there? It's because they didn't want us with a film crew to drive through areas like this.
Like those plastic things. That's actually where people will sit down and eat.
Yeah. Cell phone shop.
Yeah, water on the ground as usual. I hate to say it. That's made their own.
Small town China. It's like spare time.
Yeah.
They messed around. These guys built a motorcycle or something, and they all took turns trying out what these guys were building. It was cute. Yeah.
Kind of restaurants, the same kind of signs, the same kind of activities. You know, that's rural China.
If it's not meant for tourism, it's going to look the same.
It's going to look like that. Yeah, we've got so much footage. This isn't, to be honest, we didn't go and like handpick this footage and say this is like a representation of poverty or something.
No.
This is just a normal. We're going through our library, like
Slice of life.
let's talk about China, what it really looks like. So we are leaving this town, and I put into my GPS our destination, okay, which I can't even remember what it was, but it led us down this path that you can see in the background. So we get out the town, and it wants us to go through this like very rural area in order to get over a mountain, basically.
Yeah, my film crew was literally driven like around and away from these places for fear that we would shoot it. I was there 2017, 18, and 19 on like for a month away at a chunk.
Yes.
Okay. And
like I would be there for a month, and then I would come back, and then I would go back for another month, and then I would come back, and it was like 4 months out of each year.
that's what the GPS was saying, and I was like, this doesn't seem right, but whatever, let's follow it.
Right.
So then what kind of happened was we ended up on this dirt road over here, as you can see. And then you can see where the people actually live, the people that go down into that town to hang out and buy stuff. And you were asking this lady over here, this very interesting one-legged lady.
Missing a leg, yeah.
Yeah, one-legged lady with her geese and
Legless, we
chickens.
could call her.
Yeah, exactly. Now, she was like, this happens a lot, by the way. You're like, can we go? Is there a road up there? And she's like, yes, go that way. Go that way.
Well, I was asking.
Just get out of here.
I knew
That happens a lot too. Just like, yeah, shoo.
the town. Right?
Yeah.
So I said, where's the town?
They'll point in the direction they think you look like you're going, so you just go away. And China's not the only country that does that.
She's very confident in her response. Yeah, just go this way.
Just go this
Oh, I got a yes for it. I got a great feel for what it was like when I was there.
way. Guess what? That doesn't go anywhere.
Well, it went somewhere.
Yeah, it went to like a goat path. Yeah.
Dabba Laban's Baba Zabby.
Yap, yip, yip, gok, gok. Hag, hig, hig, hug, hug. Jen, jen, jin, jon, jon. Lam, lam, lim, lom, lom.
he's doing an ad for VPN. Okay, so anyways, they go up through this town, and this is in general. Anytime we were in a town, not a city, if you looked at a side road, this is what everything looked like. That right there, that building right there, that kind of stuff. In Beijing, the first time I went to China in 2001, I went to Beijing, right in front of the Forbidden City. There were what were called the hutongs, and they were mud hut kind of looking buildings, hand built just like this, in like by the dozens in front of the Forbidden City. And everybody, like 8 families in these lines, would use one toilet. There was no running water. There was somebody had run a pipe halfway down the lanes, so people would go fill buckets and that kind of stuff. And then everybody just shared and lived off of that. And tourists would come and look at the hutongs. And I remember being there and knowing the people, like, it was a big tourist spot, was to go to hutongs. And I was like, it was depressing. It was like, ironically, it had been there forever, for decades, in front of the Forbidden City, which is this ginormous, like, castle space, just on the other side of the wall. Yeah, it was, these kind of things in Beijing, downtown proper. And before the Olympics, they broomed all of them, took all the families that were in there and moved them. They built a building and said, you live there now. And then they just bulldozed the whole thing and stuff. And I remember some people going, it's sad that they're bulldozing the hutongs, and I'm like, only for you. That's a shitty way to live, especially in a country that's supposed to have resources like this. And they wanted to put on a good view. Now, and I was like, I thought it was a good thing that they were moving them to these high rises. The question was the quality of those high rises, or whether they were actually moved there at all. Later on, it seemed to be, from people I talked to, that they were not moved to better quarters within Beijing. They were moved outside the city, away from everyone else.
A lot of people live here, and you'll also see there are people walking on the side of the road, etc., etc. But this is kind of China, this is
It's not a poor province, not even a poor town. Very average.
What is the...
Yeah, you're talking about in the alleged 1.3 billion people that are there, 600 to 700 million people live like this.
What would you say the percentage of people that live in this kind of situation are?
At least 40%.
Yeah.
Right. So when you read statistics about China, you're going to think, oh, wow, it's completely urbanizing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But almost half of the population still lives in conditions like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, look, here we got a dude herding his goats.
Right. Which is whatever, right?
I mean, it's a simple life.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, there's nothing wrong with this lifestyle. I'm not trying to say that herding goats and living in a shack in the rural mountainside or whatever is bad. No. It's just that this is a reality.
Right.
And this is a reality that China tries to hide.
That's well said.
Mm-hmm. And it's very frustrating because...
Yeah, instead of just understanding that that's part of the lifestyle, like India shows this part of its people, and nobody messes with them. Nobody says India's crap because they have goat herders, right?
Every time you want to talk about this kind of thing and point out that this is a reality in China, you get a slew of...
Yeah, that's... they basically just dump those people out of the city. And as far as sustainability, I mean, most of these people are running electricity off of diesel motors or coal plants.
Of people trying to attack you and defend China as being modern and lifting everybody out of poverty and so on. Meanwhile, this is actually what China's like.
There's been a trend of a lot of videos. There are paid influencers that we've spoken about many times. Mm-hmm. In China, and they pay Westerners to go make China look good.
Yeah.
The whole China's...
Dude, I realized that was largely what we were doing over there, and the whole story they were telling us is like, we really want to show you what we've been doing to help people with poverty and stuff like that. My antenna went up, and then every day as we continued to shoot, except when life would just squeeze through, like the time our driver was abducted while we were going to a location. The cops pulled us over and just snatched our driver away. He was screaming and fighting with them as he left. It was so weird. That most of the time they were going way out of their way to make sure we didn't did I like China? I liked China more in the early 2000s when I was there by myself. Since Xi Jinping has took over, it's all about some absurd version of face that's just super authoritarian and very dangerous.
It's trying to basically look like a first world country.
Yes.
When in fact the reality is this is not even taken that long ago. This is what the reality of China is. You will never.
By the way, match this with the ghost cities and understand even the high rises are largely fake.
See this kind of stuff on their channels.
Yeah.
So when these paid influencers or paid YouTubers go out, they'll call a video like, this is the real hidden China, deep secret China, you know, to make it look like you're going to see
And
something.
then they'll show you a new project like an underground railway or a high-speed train or an airport or something.
The reality is when you go around with a government minder and a government person that
We had one.
literally has
We also had 2 producers with us who were basically working there.
an itinerary for you.
Like they were working as minders without being official minders.
They're never, ever going to take you here. And this is not something we have to go searching deep for. And
If you went to India, seriously, if you went to India, if you went to most Middle Eastern countries where you could get around, anywhere that you could be safe going around, relatively safe as anyway, Africa, whatever, nobody give a shit. You'd see there'd be big gleaming cities. And then like you go to Delhi and like, oh my gosh, it's a huge city. Or Thailand, go to Bangkok or something. It's an obviously modern city. It's, it's different than American cities or European cities, but it's definitely advanced in many ways and has a functioning structure that you'd recognize. But then you go out in the rural areas and it looks like this. And there's no shame about it. The difference is when you hide it, and the value of hiding it includes essentially making people vanish. That's when it gets scary.
No,
this is something we see every single day if you just have your own means of transportation. So when you see these people that go out there to get paid to make China look very rich or whatever, the reality is that China is about somewhere in the middle of the world. It's nowhere near the developed world.
No.
In fact, most of the country that we would go on, you would be able to see in your own vehicle is third world.
Correct.
It is not a developed country. And the thing is, just because the leader of China, Xi Jinping, can say we've eradicated poverty, it just means that these people aren't allowed to talk about poverty
Right. That's the thing. They hide it
anymore.
Well, I mean, you can see here they're doing a little bit of construction in the rural area, kind of destroying nature's whatever. That's kind of common. We got lots of clips of that in different parts of the country. But, again.
Yeah, they build these buildings and then if you drive by a year later, they'll be empty.
It's not that...
no one in them. Not even that lady. The lady with the one leg down the street with the geese. They don't go, hey, congratulations, here's your new building. Move over here. Move across the street. We gave you a bigger building. We just keep people busy. That's what we do.
China's poor and we're not trying to do anything like that. But the fact of the matter is if you try to show this footage and you try to show the people living there, it'll be completely wiped off the internet. It'll be denied. They will deny, no, this doesn't exist in China.
Right.
That's what's really freaking annoying is all those paid influencers, they won't acknowledge that this is a real thing in China. And
again, like I said, if you go to India or something like that,
the government,
that's a natural part of what's there. There's no shame in it. We have Appalachia over here. The U.S. government is not forcing people not to film in the Tennessee mountains. Is that to keep people employed? Yes, Karen. The problem is it's construction for construction's sake and no one knows what they're doing. So on my second trip there by myself, before I did the show I was doing, one of the big stories was that there was an earthquake in this town and all the school children, basically almost 1-to-1, every school-age child in the city had died because the buildings they were in had all collapsed. A lot of the other buildings were still up, but specifically in this earthquake, the new school buildings that they had built for all the school children had all collapsed. It just flattened. And it was because the dude who was in charge of building them for the Communist Party, for the city, or whatever, the regional provisional government or whatever, had sold all the rebar. He built these concrete buildings out of concrete blocks, and the rebar they had set aside for it, the dude just sold them. And there was no building inspector to come by and check and go, why the fuck isn't there any rebar in any of these 3-story fucking concrete block buildings? And they it's horrifying. The other big story when I was over there, like we're having this problem with our, you notice the Russian media is picking on America for baby food shortages and Fox News is dicking around. The Chinese media isn't saying shit about that. Well, that's because they had a major baby formula poisoning that happened across the country. It was horrifying. And now they're the two biggest smuggled items into China, things that people sneak into China when they go to Hong Kong specifically is what they were doing, is baby formula and chocolate, because all the chocolate is fake. It's all just flavoring. There's no real chocolate in the country.
Massive wage growth and global leadership
Bullshit.
in high tech.
Nonsense. Like all this is like, again, if you're talking about, this is Danny's written piece. This is like cut straight from the CCP. There's no global leadership in high tech. China does not have global leadership in high tech. They have one awesome company, DJI. They're the drone company, awesome. They do great work. But in spite of their connection to the government, not the other way around.
Public infrastructure development.
Nonsense.
And renewable energy.
Baloney. I literally went to a recycling plant where the container that was where all the recyclables were supposed to go into and be processed, the big tank that was the receiver with a big, like an open valve on the top of it so that all the plastic could go into it, was fake. It was painted. It was a concrete mold made to look like a tank, like a big water tank. It was literally shaped to, it was solid. It was solid concrete. It was not, there was, oh, God damn it. What do you think about the leftover men and women problem? Horrifying, Chris. So we've talked about the demographics in China a little bit, but there are way fewer men and women than they said because of the one-child policy than they need to repopulate, and they lied, and they overcounted their population by 132 million, largely in the 18 to 45 or 18 to 35 category. And it's most like where there are people, it's men. There are way fewer women. They overcounted the women more than they overcounted the men. It's bad. And all the women, by the way, because they their families want them to have a decent life most of the time, and there's so few of them, they want them where the moneyed men are. So they send them to the port cities. They send them to Shanghai and Beijing and stuff where they might meet a politician or a head of industry or somebody like that, or the son of somebody in that, instead of some other villager. So all the villages are just full of dudes. It's a sausage fest.
But the West's pursuit of
global birth control now, 420 God, we already have that. We do not have an overpopulation problem worldwide. We don't. The opposite is true.
war and color revolution.
But the West's pursuit of war and color continues. By the way, Jimmy's reading this as fact when it is straight out of a Beijing pamphlet. China's accomplished major achievements: the elimination of extreme poverty. Nonsense. They just changed the name of what it means to be extremely impoverished from $400 to $401. If you have $1 over, $400 a year, you are no longer living in extreme poverty. Is your life that different from $400 to $450? No. You still have the exact same life. Your life is not going to change until you clear the 2,000 mark in China, as in USD per year. Period. Nothing is going to change fundamentally about your life. The scramble will always be there. It's garbage. Elimination of massive wage growth. No, they haven't. They've been printing billionaires and millionaires. None of them can leave the country with their money. It's all fart air. It's all fang pi. And global leadership in high tech. Says who? What thing? What are you talking about? Like I said, DJI is great, but what leadership in high tech? What are you talking about? Now, honestly, I don't know. South Korea? Fuck yeah. Austria and CERN. UK, Taiwan, the United States. I mean, basically, if you borrow everything Taiwan does and pretend that's what mainland China does, maybe public infrastructure development. Jesus Christ, like this is just fucking dumb. Hold on, China, the debt on their bullet trains is absurd. Okay, this is, and you don't even have to look hard to search this stuff because it's so readily available. It's like fucking everywhere. Hold on, but China's high-speed railways plunge from high profits into a debt trap. They are at what, 5 trillion yuan? Maybe more. Hold on. Maybe there's a line with a sharp decline in the transportation density. They built all these lines that go to places people don't go. So Beijing to Shanghai does very well. It has a lot of people going on it, except once COVID happened and all the lockdowns did, so they all froze up. They're just sitting there rusting essentially. But this, the 1776 kilometer Lanzhou to Urumqi line has only 2.3 million. Same costs, same construction costs, same everything, and like, 5% the business year round. China's overall transportation density for HSR was 17 per passenger kilometers in 2015, while it was 34 passenger kilometers for Japan's Shinkansen in the same year. So think about this: the size of Japan and the population of Japan, which is, whatever. Let's look at what's Japan's current population. This will give you an idea. Okay, so Japan has 125 million people in it, okay? Almost as many people as Russia does. That's hilarious. The next up is Russia. 125 million people. And there are more people riding the trains in Japan, double the number of people riding the trains in Japan than there are in China for high-speed rail. What? How is that a sign of wealth in the country? Do you realize how few people can afford to take high-speed rail? And there's their debt versus interest payments. Yeah, there we go. Now we're still on this part. It's long. Sorry.
Continues.
We'll do the first half of this because we don't have to do all of it because you get the point.
Tank Man propaganda conceals images such as these, and there they are. Seems like they're having a good time together.
Yeah, they're just having a good time together in the roundup, and if you move, you die.
The truth is, no major clashes between peaceful protesters and authorities occurred. The violence stemmed from rioters outside the square, and half the casualties were authorities facing down heavy arms.
Facing down heavy arms.
So there was violence there, right, Danny?
Yep, indeed there was. It happened the
It was all CIA guys.
night of June 3rd into June 4th. And
yeah, it's weird that the other protesters who were rounded up aren't moving.
Violence, there's still a lot of misunderstanding, not a lot of understood about it, other than
it was all, not a lot of people understand the Tiananmen Square rebellion, but what we do understand is that it was all fomented by a super Jew in the CIA, and that the Chinese people didn't really want it, and when given half a chance, they would just sit down with the soldiers and have a snack.
the fact that we know that there, yeah. Well,
all I ever heard of it was, they ran this guy over with a tank.
No, you didn't.
I couldn't believe it on the recruiting thing. It still blows my mind.
Show it. Yeah, Jimmy doesn't know what the fuck Kurt is talking about.
And that's the thing. There was violence, but a lot of it wasn't covered by Western journalists. The journalist, I think his name was James Weidenberg, he's not a journalist, he's a photographer who took the Tank Man photo. He was very angry that he couldn't stay at the square longer because he was so injured from a rioter who had hit him in the head with a rock the night before, about 5 kilometers away.
And this is why the Jan 6ers need to be set free, and BLM needs to do a roundup.
A lot of the violence
They need to round up all the Antifa and BLM. They were bringing soup.
was happening.
He was hit by a can of soup.
And he was very worried that he wasn't going to get a Pulitzer because he didn't get enough material. But that sort of proves that there was violence happening. And one thing that you see from those
Yeah, but not by the Chinese government. Those poor doves.
photos that isn't often talked about is how Chinese soldiers, all the way up until the violence started 5 kilometers outside of Beijing and in other parts of the city.
Yeah, outside of the area where they had encircled it with armed soldiers.
Before that, Chinese soldiers, the PLA, were unarmed. And that's why there were so many cops and soldiers who died, because they were unarmed. They weren't ready to
Because the government didn't trust them with arms.
deal with riots. They were trying to negotiate with the protesters, and that's what happened for
Their cops don't
6-7
have
weeks.
guns. Their cops don't get any respect. The culture ministry you'd have to be afraid of, but the cops, like, people just give them the finger and drive by. It's wild out there.
What the fuck are you talking about? When was Kurt there? It's wild in China. You can give the cop the finger and just keep driving.
And the tank man,
What?
and this is very, very interesting
I think he's mixing it up with Dubai.
because the full video shows so blatantly that,
Get that
I mean,
video.
he was standing in front of a tank, moving around the tank, gets on top of the
Wait a minute. What? Get that video. Is that what he's saying? What is Jimmy looking at?
that,
Get
I mean,
video.
he was standing
Get that video. Boy,
in front of a tank, moving
get it. Get it. What did I tell you?
around the tank, gets on top of the tank,
Where is this
talks
video?
to the person.
Where's this video? Who am I? What the fuck? Who do I gotta fire around here to get? I mean, I thought we were all pulling together. Isn't this some like what part of Marx? Do you even Marxism, bro?
in the tank, and then
Now he's looking at us.
and gets off, and then people in the neighborhood kind of whisk him away and say, okay, you should probably get out of the way now. But he doesn't, there's no violence, he's not arrested, he's not shot at. So the tank man narrative is so strong. It's such a black op kind of propaganda.
Get the fuck out of here. No, just because Kurt misremembers. The whole point is this unarmed man with his groceries basically just standing in front of the tank. That was, it's an emblem of a man standing. And by the way, the nerve of these motherfuckers saying that the cops were injured because they weren't really armed and they didn't have any way of fighting back. And that's why the guy with the bags of groceries in his fucking work clothes standing in front of the tank is bullshit.
A message to demonstrate violence that
Demonstrate violence. He was alone. He was trying to block a parade of tanks heading into the area.
the real violence that occurred that day
The real violence.
has been so suppressed because
It was the rioters. It was the George Soros super Jew people.
was involvement, right? There was Keller Revolution activity. There was
Yes, there was an ideological revolution pushing back against Marxism in the country, which, by the way, ended up taking hold. Deng Xiaoping's Shanghai group was what brought in that era of great change from that period forward.
funding coming in from the NED, from Soros' organization, from all sorts of
Jesus Christ. Like, from Soros, is Jimmy melting?
sources. There was a CIA operation that allowed a lot of these forces to leave through Hong Kong into the United States. Chai Ling, who was one of the protest leaders, who called in an interview, in a secret interview with Western media, she called for the blood of Chinese people to be spilled in these protests in order to change the government, in order to overthrow the government. She was whisked away by Operation Yellowbird to the United States, and she ended up working at Bain Capital. I mean, this is sort of the involvement.
Jesus
This is some of the involvement.
Hold on. Let me get back. Like, see? This is what happens.
Was whisked away from protests in order to change the government, in order to overthrow the government. To be in a secret interview with Western media, she called for the blood of Chinese
Wait, what
people
was
to
her
be
name again?
spilled in
Hold
these
on.
protests
I wanna
in
bring
order
this
to
back.
change the
This- I know
government. Called
this-
in an interview into the United Nations that allowed a lot of these forces to leave through Hong Kong into the United States. Chai Ling, who was one of the protest leaders, who called in an interview, in a secret interview with Western media, she called for the blood of Chinese people to be spilled in these protests in order to change the government, in order to overthrow the government. She was whisked away by Operation Yellowbird to the United States, and she ended up working at Bain Capital. I mean, this is...
Let's see. You two. This is so this is what they're, and I don't know if this is the secret interview with Tsai Ling. We will mobilize Chinese people around the world to protest martial law. Martial law won't succeed. In 10 days, in a year, in 100 years. Those who lose the hearts of the people will perish. Overthrow the illegal government headed by Li Peng.
Tsai Ling had successfully resisted the proposal to move the struggle back to the campuses and allied herself once more with those determined to hold the square. On the following morning, she contacted American journalist Philip Cunningham.
I think this is what they're talking about.
I have been feeling very sad recently. The students themselves lack a developed sense of democracy. To be honest, from the day I called for a hunger strike, I knew we would not get any results. Certain people, certain causes are bound to fail. I have been very clear about this all along, but I've made an effort to present a staunch image, to show that we were striving for victory. But deep down, I knew it was all futile. The more involved I got, the sadder I became. I already felt this back in April. All along, I've kept it to myself, because being Chinese, I felt I shouldn't badmouth the Chinese. But I can't help thinking sometimes, and I might as well say it. You, the Chinese, you are not worth my struggle. You are not worth my sacrifice.
I think she's like 19, 18, 19 at this point.
But then, I can also see that in this movement, there are many people who do have a conscience. There are many decent people among the students, workers, citizens, and intellectuals. The students keep asking, what should we do next? What can we accomplish? I feel so sad. Because how can I tell them that what we are actually hoping for is bloodshed? For the moment when the government has no choice but to brazenly butcher the people. Only when the square is awash with blood will the people of China open their eyes. Only then will they really be united. But how can I explain any of this to my fellow students? And what is truly sad is that some students and some famous, well-connected people are working hard to help the government, to prevent it from taking such measures. For the sake of their selfish interests and their private dealings, they are trying to cause our movement to collapse and get us out of the square before the government becomes so desperate that it takes action. If we allow the movement to collapse on its own, then the government will be able to wipe out all the leaders of the movement.
Yeah. So, by the way, you have to look at this in context of not from the mentality of being an American also. That once this kind of thing ends, once it even takes, I mean, nobody protests right now as it is. There's been some crazy stuff around lockdowns recently, and it's been extraordinary when it happens in Shanghai, especially in other places. But after these kind of things go down, the results afterwards, what the government does to people and how they round them up and all that kind of stuff, is very different than a bunch of people saying this about Union Square in New York or the CHOP or the Chaz or fucking Occupy Wall Street. Because that's we're going to look at this as Americans, most of us, or in Western countries as a bunch of Occupy Wall Street kind of kids or a student protest. But this is not how it, after that's over, if you lose in this situation, you're dead or you're in jail forever.
As well as those leaders in the party and in the military who dare to oppose them, who represent the people. Deng Xiaoping has made it very clear that there is a small handful of people, not only in the party and in society, but also among the students.
The irony is, I think, interestingly enough, about this time and phase is that Deng Xiaoping was taking another track along the lines of what Xi was doing. But in many ways, he was trying to coordinate his opening of the country at the same time. And they both had dual tracks of almost the same thing, that there probably was a lot more crisscross in what both of them were trying to accomplish as far as the country than they realized. But both of them are afraid of how the whole thing will shake down because of the authoritarian base of the government. And so they were, it was a delicate bouncing back and forth.
That's why I feel so sad. Because I can't say all this to my fellow students. I can't tell them straight out that we must use our blood and our lives to call on the people to rise up. Of course, the students will be willing, but they are still such young children.
And she's right. I mean, had there been a big slaughter, and Deng Xiaoping knew this, and it's one of the reasons why they dialed it back, and that's why there are a lot of people are trying to convince them not to do it, was so that there would be no fundamental change. They thought it might work, but there
you go. Are you going to stay in the square yourself? No, I won't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she had to leave. Anyway, so that's the part he's talking about.
Why did the U.S. go to war in Iraq?
Hold on. That's where Danny Haifong is saying that she was calling for the protester to be killed. She was intending to be one of those killed as well. That was the whole point. She was speaking in terms of a revolutionary.
Sort of the involvement.
Oh, and let's see. Hold on. There was a let's see. Was tenement. Let's see. Where does she? Alma mater, Peking University of Beijing, Harvard Business School, President Chief Officer. She works at Genzabar, President and Chief Operating Officer at Genzabar. I don't know what that is. Let's see. Let's see references. Headline book. A lot of this is really old. 2021. Here you go. RFA. This is I think this is the same. Yeah. So she writes for Radio Free Asia as well. Beijing's handling of the pandemic and repeated military incursions have hardened attitudes in Brussels. She wrote this article for Radio Free Asia with Shui Xiaoshan. A recent visit by members of the European Parliament to democratic Taiwan shows the European countries are starting to take seriously China's threat. Yeah. So anyways, she's also writing for Radio Free Asia, and the idea that, and she works for Zen. What's this company? Hold on. Hold on. Chai Ling. She is currently okay. So she's I'm trying to find her most recent. Make sure it's the same one because there's a few Chailung. Writer's life. There we go. She works for a company called. She's the founder of All Girls Allowed. I can't sign into. I have to sign in to look at that part of it. Hold on. I'll see if I could find this. Like All Girls Allowed. So she's the founder. Tsai Lung is the founder of All Girls Allowed. It's a In Jesus' Name, Simply Love Her. It is a Christian organization. She's emboldened the great commandment to love God and love our neighbor as we love ourselves, and the great commission to make disciplines of all nations. All Girls Allow exist to restore life, value, and dignity by educating, empowering women and girls, and engaging partners to realize global impact. The vision of All Girls Allowed is in Jesus' name, simply love her as we love the least of these, those who are the most marginalized. We serve Jesus as we serve women and girls, and we help all realize their full potential as individuals who are valued and made in the image of God. So they advocate for the least of these, as it says, for poverty organization, partnerships with other groups, wholeness. We believe that God intended for us to be whole, spiritually, vocationally, emotionally, relationship, physically, financially. She's okay. Integrity. Proverbs tells the righteous walk in integrity, driven by faith. Okay. So she started this organization, and there she is. Not exactly Bain Capital. She's the founder and CEO of this Christian girls organization. She's a missionary, basically. She lives in Boston with her husband. This is, just for the record, All Girls Allowed is not a Bain Capital organization. Neither is Genzibar.
This is some of the involvement that the United States had in the Tiananmen Square incident, that the actual violence that occurred there doesn't get talked about because it would point to very suspicious activity.
Well, Soros' name is crazy to hear pop up in that. Like, he's also so. Wow, this is really wild, man.
Yeah, it's wild. All right, I'm done with that. We'll dance in that circle all goddamn day. Good Lord. But I mean, that's the simplest thing. Like, he drops the whole she works for Bain Capital, and they're like, that's it. I see. There you go. Aha. And now she's like one Google search, and you find that she runs a Christian girls association. Fucking hell. So lazy. Again, all this to come down on the side of Tiananmen Square was bullshit. This is where Jimmy Dore is right now. That's the part that kind of is amazing. The Ukrainians have it coming because the Azov Battalion used to use a Nazi symbol, which is really a Viking symbol that they adjusted to mean national identity, NI. But it looks Nazi-esque, and the Nazis took, symbols. And if a Nazi takes a symbol and your culture tries to take it back, basically Tibet's full of Nazis because they have swastikas all over everything, according to the Dore doctrine. And then so the Ukrainians had it coming. Yemen, on the other hand, even though they have they're literally giving the Sieg Heil and the Nazi salute, they're off limits. The Russians do the same thing Jimmy accuses Israel of doing. The Russians have to do it. The Israelis are wrong to do it. Therefore, the only difference between these two groups of people is the fact that the Israelis are largely Jews, and it's seen as an identity move by the Jews. So, and then to reach back into Tiananmen Square and lay it at the feet of George Soros, fucking hell.